Hi everyone, can you believe we're at day 5 already of the Christmas series? And today I'm using this lovely set from Tim Holtz. It's called Modern Festive and it's got a lovely selection of quite sort of quirky looking designs. There's a poinsettia. My favourite is this orange. I'm really a big fan of this. I'm quite excited about this set actually. This is just the sort of set I love. I love foliage, I love florals. And having this sort of bit of a modern design really appeals to me, so I'm quite excited about this. So the first thing I'm going to do is grab some watercolour cardstock and some watercolour paints, and the plan is to watercolour some backgrounds basically to give me all the colours that I'm going to need for the different elements. So the first thing I'm going to do is some nice reds for the poinsettia. The watercolours I'm using are Altenew. I think these two reds that I'm going to use for this are probably my most used colours. So this is the darkest red, and I love that both reds are kind of a bit of a pinky red. This one in particular is a lovely sort of magenta, pinky, crimson colour. I'm doing two colours because obviously that poinsettia's got two layers, so I thought it would be nice to have two different shades of red. I'm working on this tiny little plastic palette, which I know is a bit awkward looking, but I'm using this grey Sizzix matte on top of my glass mat purely because my lights really glare on the glass mat and make it quite difficult for filming. I would normally be straight on my white glass mat, which makes it much easier for clearing up than this tiny little piece of plastic I'm working on. But that's why, if you're wondering, I'm looking a little bit clumsy. So I'm going on to an orange for the orange slices. And again, I'm going to do a couple of different shades because that orange has got two pieces. One is kind of essentially the inside of the orange and one is the rind. So I'm going to do a dark, that was a nice dark burnt orange, and I'm just working out a yellow. You've probably noticed that I tend not to really mix colours, and where I am mixing, I'm literally kind of mixing them on the watercolour card. I'm just adding in a bit more and moving it around. I end up buying so many watercolour palettes because I just don't like mixing. I don't know what it is. Something in my brain just makes me not want to work out what colours I need to combine. And I'll occasionally mix a little bit, but generally I just keep buying watercolours so that I've got all the shades I need already done. So this is a nice darker olive green than I had on the Altenew palette, which is perfect. I want a nice variety of shades for some of the greenery. I've already got more of a sort of turquoisey green. And then I've got a nice brown in this palette that's a kind of dark brown. And then I will switch back to the Altenew palette. There's a couple of browns in there as well, because for that pine cone I'm going to want a couple of different shades. And then there's two browns in this, and I'm kind of mixing them on the watercolour cardstock. I want these card pieces to have a bit of variety, and you'll see they've all got brush strokes on. They're quite rough looking, but that's what I want. You can see here they're all dry, and I can die cut all my pieces now. So I'm going to work my way through these, and I'll jump forward to show you them once I've die cut all the pieces. So I've got all my die cutting done. Now I can work out where I'm going to place them all. A couple of them need assembling, like this poinsettia has got two layers, and the oranges. The rest are all just sort of individual elements. So I thought I'd assemble the poinsettia and the oranges and then work out how I'm going to assemble them on a card. I've, for the most part, just cut one of each of the elements. I've done two lots of the oranges, and I think one of the sort of pine leaves sets, I've done two of those. But for the most part, I thought this would give me enough to fill a corner of a card without needing too much more. Obviously, I've still got all my leftover bits of card. You can see them there in the top right. So if when I come to assemble this into a little sort of floral spray, I decide I do want any more of anything, I've only got to quickly die cut the extras. So I'm pretty sure this is going to give me enough pieces, but we'll see as we come to assemble it all. So I've got a card blank and a piece of craft card to go on the front. I decided that the craft card would be a nice background for these watercolours. They're kind of quite bright and fun, so I thought the craft card would be a nice contrast. So I'm just going to pop this onto the front of a white card blank, and I've left a little border around the edge, and then I can work out my placement so that I know if I need to die cut any more or if this is enough. And I've got to leave room for a sentiment, obviously, so I think this is going to be just perfect. I can fit a sentiment in the bottom right corner, and I will do the sentiment before I actually stick anything down, because then I know I can fit these elements around it. So I'm not going to stick these down yet, I'm just sort of doing a rough placement. And I think this is going to look nice actually with some white stitching around the edge. It's something I quite often do with craft cards. So I've grabbed a white gel pen. This is a Signo Uniball, I think they're called. This is the best white gel pen. I have bought so many over the years. This one has got a lovely white opaque finish. It tends to work pretty much until you run out the ink. I've bought so many white gel pens, used them a couple of times, and then you just can't get the ink out. So if you are after a white gel pen, I couldn't recommend this one enough. Whenever I see them in the shops, I grab a handful because I don't ever want to run out. So that's giving it a nice edge. I don't know why I left all my die cuts in there and worked around them like that, because I haven't stuck them down, and I'm going to move them out of the way now to do my sentiment. But anyway, I'm showing you how I craft. This is the reality of the awkward way I quite often do things, making life hard for myself. So I'm just going to ink up a sentiment. This sentiment is from a Sizzix set called Festive Sentiments, and this one fits just perfectly in the gap I've got. Sizzix have got some really lovely stamp sets out at the moment. And what I love, because they're Sizzix, they've kind of designed them to work with dies. So in every set you get a really nice variety of sizes and layouts. So you've always got something that will fit around your die cuts. So I've stuck the poinsettia down with a foam pad, just one, so that I've got plenty of room around that foam pad to tuck all the other elements. And everything else I will glue flat to the card. But just having that one part raised makes it much easier, because that's the focal point. Everything else is going to be kind of tucked in. And because I'm using a wet glue, I can move these around a bit. So I'm going to put I've got 2 holly leaves, and there are berries for those, but I'll stick those on once I've got the leaves in. Love the look of these dies, really, really nice shapes. And then I've got pine cones and an orange to sort of fit in this corner. And I don't want the oranges to look too symmetrical, so I'm going to kind of overlap that one with the pine cones a little bit, just so that it doesn't look too odd with the other one. I'm just going to have it peeping out over those pine cones. So I'm happy with that. I can just add in the berries now for the holly. And the pieces for the berries for the holly and the centre of the poinsettia are basically the same die, you just do it in different colours. So I'm just going to have these kind of poking out over that flower actually. I'm just tucking them in. One more to go. And then that's this card finished. I'm really happy with how this card turned out. I think this is a design I might actually use for some of my personal cards myself this year. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. We're on day 5, so we've got a few more to come. So if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of the other cards. And I will see you very soon.